Right, I think I'm ready. Are you guys ready? Cool. Let's rock and roll. Hey, it's the weekend, Friday morning, and it's time for another Beard and Fen podcast episode. In this week's episode, I chat to a mate of mine, Ryan Abramowitz, who lives in Toronto, Canada, but is originally from South Africa. We met back in 2012 at a Rodriquez concert in Toronto, and we've been mates ever since. Ryan himself is a drummer and played in a band called The Unchained. And I decided to catch up with him and find out how he had been affected by COVID and the effect that COVID has had on the music industry in Toronto. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Your hat is hysterical.
You like it?
Yeah, I like it. That looks good. That looks good.
I've got three. I've got another one that says horny.
Okay.
And then another one that says black sheep or something like that.
Good, man. I guess it describes you well, right? Might as well wear what you... Yeah.
It depends what mood I'm in. Hey?
Depends the mood. Yeah, you're not like that all the time.
Yeah, no, I think I need to... It's like one of those things is like you want to get the whole collection. So you can have it.
So do you have the whole collection?
No. They're not that cheap. So so I'll progressively.
You know what? If you believe enough, maybe one day it will come true, man.
Well, I hope so. Because I could do with all those caps.
Sure. Yeah. Good stuff.
So otherwise, how are things going?
Things are good. It's been an interesting time, but fortunately everyone, around me is keeping healthy and smart about everything going on, and which is really great to see. So just working through the times just like everyone else, How about you? How are you doing?
No, very good, very good. Well, I mean, South Africa is very much like other countries. They've, done their whole lockdown thing. I think South Africa's been a little bit stricter than most countries.
I've heard, yeah.
So there's been some pushback about that, and some people saying it's good and some people saying it's bad. I mean, if you're looking at the stats, I think we're doing pretty well. That's assuming that the stats are all correct. And in a way, some people are saying we're just waiting for the shit to hit the fan, but we'll see. Time will tell. So we've had various levels of lockdown here. We started with level 5, which was everyone must stay at home. Everyone's not allowed to go out. You can go to the supermarket, you can go to the chemist, but that's it. You must stay at home. You don't go to work, that kind of thing.
Right.
And then we went to level 4, and now we're on level 3. I think from the 1st of June, we're on level 3. So, there were some things like if you smoked and you enjoyed having a drink during lockdown, level 5. And level 4, you weren't able to buy cigarettes or buy booze. And even now, you can't buy cigarettes. You can buy alcohol now, but only from Monday to Thursdays between, I think, 9 and 5 in the afternoon or something like that. Yeah, so...
Yeah, I guess everyone's so worried about their vices. Where am I going to get my cigarettes? Where am I going to get my booze? We can all learn a little bit about ourselves going through something like this, right? I think there's some true colors that come out in us, the way we think about it, the way we process it and handle it, I've also taken a big learning sort of about just thinking about my community in a specific way and the people around me. I have, elder members of my community around me, and just sort of thinking about how to help them and what they're going through, and being considerate of them has been, very important through this process, and also how to take care of our house, like how to take care of our home and, keep things nice and clean and keep our hands nice and clean. There's some, and we've had some really nice family time at home. I know it's a privileged thing for us to have, been able to do this, but we actually had to move out of our place at the Harborfront. We have a nice little new home just in Port Credit, Mississauga, outside of that area. But we're very lucky that we got out of the core of Toronto sort of right when things, were getting a little bit risky. Let's just say that. Going in an elevator for me a few times a day, it felt a little uncomfortable. So we've made a move. We've kind of come out a bit more into the nature, and it's sort of been really nice quality time with my my new wife, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's been tough moments. I miss my family. I miss giving my mom a hug. You know, but we do our best to keep in touch, and I just want everyone to keep safe and healthy, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
I
I mean, so you're saying that you moved away from downtown Toronto specifically because of what was happening, and you decided it was time.
It was a little bit of both, you know. It's nice to have a nice small house somewhere. We were in a condo before, beautiful area, like you saw, beautiful neighborhood.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, it's the timing was right. Kind of really nice to have a change, and we get a fresh start. You know, start our lives together here. So it's beautiful. You can see some nice greenery around me. Beautiful
absolutely.
Outdoor space. It's a little quieter than I'm used to. You know, I'm a city guy. I love being down there. You know, not being able to go to live music venues during this time, and watching some of our favorite music venues actually shut down. It's been a very difficult part of this process, but there's going to be changes, and I'm really hoping that, you know, we'll be okay. You know, when this all comes through. I don't know if you know, but you know the Hideout music venue in Toronto?
Yes.
That it shut down.
Okay. Wow.
So we've lost that. You know, it's one of the venues we've lost from this. So it's been a tricky time. Yeah, it's been a tricky time.
So when you were downtown, I mean, like you were saying, there's the hustle and bustle and all that kind of stuff. I mean, how long did you live downtown there?
Oh, I was at the Harbourfront for 7 years.
Okay.
So I was in the Harbourfront in Toronto is sort of the most southern point of the city, right on the lake. It's a beautiful, small, quiet neighborhood just south of the CN Tower. So very relaxing. The city itself, in the main part of the city, was just like almost a street or two north of where we live. It starts getting into a lot of roads and hustle and bustle, but just being on the lake, you know, it's no Cape Town waterfront, but it's got a feeling of relaxation, a little bit of a different pace than the rest of the city. You know, I've always loved it down there, and I got to spend 7 great years in that neighborhood. Right.
Yeah.
And I'll be back one day, you know, we'll find out. But we're very close to the lake now, but it's just needed a bit of a change.
Yeah, sure. So how far away are you now, your new place? How far is that from where you were before?
It is probably about a 20 to 25-minute drive just outside of the city. So, you know, you might think that's far, but Toronto and what we have called the Greater Toronto Area, it's actually a mega city. It's a very large city. So we now live in a city called Mississauga, but it's a part of the Greater Toronto Area. It's you know, there are a few mega cities sort of in it, and we're living on that sort of lake area of Mississauga, similar to Toronto, but you know, just outside of it. Right?
Yeah. So is it like suburban? I mean, are there like malls close by? Or I mean, because I mean, like when you were downtown, I mean, everything was so accessible. I mean, the public transport is there, like you say, there are venues, restaurants, you know, there's the Eaton Center, you know, it's like everything's there.
Yeah.
And you can either walk there or climb on the tube or whatever it is. I mean, what's it like now where you are now? Is it more like suburban?
It's definitely more suburban. I've moved into a little bit more of a suburban world, but there's a main strip area very close by that's beautiful and very lively at night. It's no downtown Toronto, but the public transit system is very accessible we're on the west end. So to the west end, to the east end, there's a GO train. I'm not sure if you ever took the GO train when we were here.
No, I didn't.
But the GO train makes it pretty accessible to get in and out of the city if you don't have a car. And it's usually a bit more accessible than driving. It's just so much traffic. You know, obviously when we were shut down, there wasn't a lot of traffic during that time, but things have slowly picked up, slowly starting to reopen. So it's getting busier again, right? As for like the actual neighborhood, because it's been locked down, I haven't had much of a chance to get to know the people of my neighborhood and my community. You know, when I walk my dogs and stuff, we always say hi, but the type of conversation no one really gets into that right now. It's socially a very there's a transformation happening. We're watching a change, for better, for worse. We're watching a change, and I think everyone's trying to just respect each other and try to make that as comfortable as it can at this time for each other. You know. So hopefully
Yeah.
when this lifts a bit, I'll get to know my neighbors more and get a better sense of the community.
Sure, yeah, that's actually true. Because I mean, I didn't think about that because you literally moved during
Right.
lockdown, and
Right.
so yeah, so you haven't really had a chance to explore your surroundings.
No,
Yeah.
not at all. I mean, we go for little walks and stuff, but
Mm.
it's not enough to go to dog parks or big parks that were closed. And,
Yeah.
these things are slowly reopening, but they've been closed for a while, and especially during my transition, right?
Mm.
So it's nice to be here. I enjoy the change. I can't wait for you to come and visit and see.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Oh, it'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
oh, geez, I was gonna ask you something now. So, what over the last couple of months, what have you been allowed to and not allowed to do in Canada, in terms of going to work or going to the shops or moving around?
So essential services have been up and running, since all of this. There's been a lockdown. Essential services were up and running. You were able to access the liquor stores. Cigarettes are sold at convenience stores, which were, open, and not supermarkets, but convenience stores. They were open for reduced hours. Everyone kind of just socially kept to themselves. A lot of parks were closed. Not a lot of people were outside for the main phase of all this. And then slowly over time, you kind of really, there's two things. People get tired of being locked down, and they need to kind of get up and out a little bit. And, from an economic standpoint and from a job security standpoint, people need to get up and working again. They can't just stay home. And not all jobs are easy just to do from home, right? I'm fortunate I can do my work from home, remotely, or in an office. It can be either way, but there are a lot of people who aren't in that situation, and they're suffering, right? So the economy has to go back, but it's nice to see. And again, my view is extremely limited. I don't like inundating myself with news because I don't find that healthy either. A reasonable dose to keep informed, but just seeing my community, my friends. I've had a couple socially distanced visit with my buddies in my backyard. I've seen my family from a social distance perspective, but there isn't too much of a pickup yet. Like music venues are still shut down. Bars are not, really open in that regard. Restaurants, no, and they're trying to get these things worked out, but it's a slow process, right?
Yeah.
And and even when they're open, it's still going to take a hit. Not everybody's going to feel too comfortable going to a concert next week, or going to the local venue to go see a show or jump into a mosh pit. Like, it's just, things are going to be slightly different, right? They're going to be slightly different, and we'll have to see how that unfolds.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very similar situation here in South Africa. Is like the venues and the restaurants and the places we would normally go watch live music and all that. Obviously, they're all being closed, and even like you say, even when they get to the point when they open up, people still going to make a judgment call on whether they're comfortable to go out and be in close proximity. Because I mean, like when you go to a music event, it's not exactly you can keep 2 meters away from everyone at all times,
No, that gets extremely difficult, right? EDM festivals, parties, any kind of real live music show, you're close to people, right? And it's always that human interaction of a live show has always been one of the components that has made, that piece of music a lot better. People love the human component of things. Sure, putting on a record and listening to music is obviously a wonderful experience, but being able to watch creativity come to life in front of you and share that with a group of people and create bonds and relationships with friends around you is such a wonderful thing to have. So it's really sad from that perspective that it's been a loss. Obviously the loss of the venues have been a loss. I mean, I think there's been a few venues, quite a few, probably about 3 or 4 now in Toronto that have shut down, maybe even more. I can't even keep track. But it's going to have an impact for a while. So I'm curious to see where that's going to go.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And it's tough.
Yeah, it is tough. Because I mean, I've got quite a few friends that are musicians here, and I mean, if that's your main livelihood, that's just gone out the window, straight away.
But even like photographers and sound engineers and everyone who's involved with the live music process, right? The people who work at the venues, running the venues, right? Bartenders, everybody. It's like the impact is profound, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So
and like, what sort of support from a government point of view do these people get? Is there like sort of some financial relief?
There is, yeah. There is a little bit of financial relief. There have been a few foundations that have provided financial relief for people involved in the music community. I don't know to what extent. I don't consider myself, a full-time musician anymore at this stage. So I'm a little bit disconnected to that kind of component. But I've watched, a few friends of mine from the music space online really trying to find ways to make ends meet and get these foundations to help them, right? Yeah. So I'm sure it's a really difficult process for them at this time. Even my photographer friends who, would go and shoot these amazing concerts, and, they're some of the most amazing photographers. But it's not like they're getting, paid a fortune to go do that in the first place. Like, some of this is the goodness of their own heart, and they go out and do this. And, they don't even get a chance to, even get, any kind of income from that at all. It's like it's really affected, their life, giving them something to do, kind of overall emotional well-being. It really sucks. Sucks to see it. It sucks to see them, hurt like that. It's too bad. It is what it is right now, Yeah. So we'll have to see how that is moving forward. I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, for you, you say like for work-wise, for you, it hasn't really affected you because you have the ability to work from home. You're still doing the sort of the web kind of stuff?
Yeah. I've been involved with it's more of what I consider like digital strategy. And, I like to help clients think through a variety of digital problems. So again, that's put me in a few different industries to work through. I've also helped, do projects within the music industry itself. And I haven't always been a musician. I've also worked a little bit as a hobbyist, fun photographer. I've taken some cool photos for some bands, and I've worked on a few like fun music video projects as well. So I've had that side of it, but mainly I work now a little bit outside of the entertainment space and a little bit more in the business space to help a variety of small businesses solve digital problems. So for me, I'm lucky because there's been a little bit of an impact where I've been getting quite a few calls of people looking for e-commerce solutions or new websites or marketing because of the way the world is changing, right? So I'm happy to support them, and it just seems to, just from my perspective, it's amazing to see how many people are really getting now, how critical this digital piece is and really want to make a difference. So I feel fortunate in that regard.
Yeah.
Right?
So, I mean, like talking about e-commerce, I mean, in Canada, I would imagine that people are pretty comfortable with ordering stuff online. Whereas like here in South Africa, I think a lot of people are still skeptical about the security about, ordering stuff online, and people are still quite used to going to the mall to buy stuff and all that. But what I've noticed is that all of a sudden people, there was a stage now that you could only buy stuff online, if you know what I mean.
So through COVID, right? Through the COVID stage?
Yeah, because of of this lockdown thing, yeah. So I mean, for a lot of things that you were, you weren't able to buy, like electronic kind of goods, that kind of stuff, like all the malls and the shops and all that were closed because the supermarkets were allowed to be open. But if you wanted to buy a monitor or you wanted to buy something for your computer, whatever it is, the only way you could get it was to buy it online. And then there was a stage where you could only buy essential goods online, and then they had a whole list of what those essential goods were, and then they opened it up and said, okay, now everything can be sold online. So I almost, and then there were businesses that normally would be brick and mortar kind of shops that all of a sudden had to pivot to create an online space.
Right.
So I mean, what's it like in Toronto? I mean, have you seen a lot of that, or were a lot of the sort of businesses where they already had an online presence like that?
A bit of both, actually. there's e-commerce is a big industry here. I would say that I still say maybe a majority of people are still getting comfortable with spending online, but there is a large amount of people who are very comfortable spending online. And it's a little bit more through trusted brands and understanding where they're spending and how they're spending it, right? So for example, do you order off sites like Amazon? Are you able to order Amazon?
Yeah,
Gary,
we can
online?
here in South Africa, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's very expensive to get the stuff here.
It's expensive, right?
Yeah, I've used Amazon a lot when I've come to Canada, and then I want to buy stuff, then I just order it online, get it shipped to the office, much easier.
Ugh, got these bugs all over me, man. Yeah, I understand. You gotta think about your own process, right? Like what made you comfortable spending online, and I think especially during COVID, a lot of people have been forced to being a little bit more comfortable spending online and actually putting their credit card and going through that process. But there are a little bit of known, brands and companies that people do feel comfortable spending with once they become comfortable with a particular brand, or if that company is using, a platform like Shopify, which is a relatively trusted e-commerce platform. People tend to feel a little bit more comfortable spending because they feel the trust is there. But I don't think everyone's ready just to whip out their credit card on any site that they see they can buy stuff. Maybe they do, right? But I think there's still caution and being aware of does the site sort of look a little valid? What is the payment processor type? These are good things to think about anyways, just before you buy things online, right? But from what I find, there's a mix. There are some brick and mortar companies that just don't have an online presence yet. Maybe they haven't considered it, but they're considering it now due to things changing. And there are a lot of brick and mortar stores that have an online presence, and there are tons of businesses that are just online, right? All they do is, direct sales online, B2C or B2B online, and that's how they run their program, right? So it's an amazing time to be a part of that. It's kind of really cool. Right.
Yeah, I think, and I mean, just talking about, conducting business digitally. It's like all of a sudden, I mean, I work for a corporate, and we've always been able to work from home, but we don't do it that often, even though we can do it. But now all of a sudden, under this circumstance, we had no choice but to work from home. So we had the infrastructure, but the infrastructure didn't scale very well in the beginning. And then, obviously they had to sort that out. And now people have become used to working from home.
Right.
And so things are different now. There's a lot more communication. Funny enough, life just seems so much busier because I think people are now communicating and trying to get stuff done. And I think also the way that you measure your performance in that environment is a little bit different. When you're in the office, people can see you in the office. People can see you sitting at your desk working. Whereas when you're working remotely, the only way that they can see that you're working is when you're producing stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So I think, in South Africa, the whole digitalization kind of thing has taken transformation. And I mean, in the last couple of years, we've, fortunately, we, started to get fiber to the house, whereas before we were using ADSL and it was very unreliable and all that. Now most people have got fiber to the home, so they've got reliable broadband, they've got good broadband, and it's not not too expensive. So I think now when this situation came along, I think people were in a better situation to be able to adapt to work remotely.
Right.
Yeah, and businesses as well. Yeah.
Understood. And that might have a long-term effect. They might realize that they can cut a bit of costs on office space and allow some of their staff to work from home. And, they don't have to always watch over their shoulder. Like, they're adults, they're going to get their jobs done. And if they don't, you should fire them, so it's, I've been working remotely for a while. Sure, I've had clients that I go work in the office, and I've worked for companies where I sort of work in office full time, but I've never really felt the need to sit, at a desk all day like that, just because it's been more flexible. And I've always wanted my life to be a little bit more flexible. So just seeing this transformation around me, I'm like, welcome to the good life, guys. Save 2 hours in traffic every day. You don't have to sit in your car. Your mental health is probably a lot better because you take breaks during the day. If you go for a nice run, you make yourself good meals at home. You take, having the gym closed, having the gym closed and stuff like isn't really, good. Like it'd be good to be able to go, physically take care of yourself. And if emotionally you take care of yourself, you don't need to sit at a desk and not move your legs and not move your body and sit still. And you don't have to work like that all the time, right? You just don't. So hopefully businesses will see that. And some of the jobs, my wife, for example, she was working in office all the time. She had no issue, but it was an 1.5-hour drive every day when we were downtown Toronto. And now they've realized she can work from home. Doesn't mean that she's never going to go into an office again, but maybe she doesn't have to be there every day, all the time at 8:00 in the morning. Maybe maybe there'll be a bit more flexibility, which would be great to see. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And like you say, it does change your quality of life, because if you're not sitting in traffic for 3 hours a day or 2 hours a day, because sometimes, if you're on your way to the office and something's gone wrong and there's a pileup or there's a backup or something like that, by the time you get to the office, which is the beginning of your day, you're already tired. You've already, just frustrated because you've had to sit in traffic for extended period of time, and like, here in South Africa, it's a little bit different because they don't actually follow the rules of the road. So there's some added frustration there. Yeah.
It's funny, but it's not funny,
you can laugh about it
really
now,
but
funny,
not,
not when you're in the situation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Ryan, what did you, well, I actually don't know what your wife does as a career.
Oh, she works for a company in the gold mining space.
Really?
So it works with sort of a document control piece.
Okay.
In that. So she's worked for a variety of industries, but right now it's with a company in the gold mining space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
she loves her work. She's very good at, doing what she does. We share that.
Yeah.
We both, enjoy our work and love being engaged with work. So, that's good.
Yeah.
Keeps us busy, right? Keeps us busy. Yeah. Something to do,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all good. It's all good. Oh man. Crazy.
But
time.
I was not so long ago, I was watching that Searching for Sugar Man movie again. I don't know.
You relived it.
You've seen it, right?
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, of course. I've probably watched it. Jeez, I can't even remember how many times I've watched it. But it takes me back to like when we first met, which was back in 2012.
2012, yeah.
On your birthday at the Rodriquez concert. So, it's good memory. And we became mates after that. And I think it was only when I came back the second time to Toronto that I actually realized that you were a musician, a drummer in a band. How did you decide to, take up drumming as a pastime? Tell us about the band that you were in.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's the the other side of life, right? The other part.
Yeah.
So my wife and I were both musicians. So she goes under the artist name Isling. She's phenomenal. She's a songwriter, a singer, piano player, guitar player. She's phenomenal, multi-instrumentalist, excellent. So I encourage any of your listeners to check her out. But I kind of got involved going into high school. I actually, during grades 6 to 8, I used to dance. I used to take jazz dancing. And I really loved the idea of sort of rhythm and coordination. And that, getting a little bit older, getting involved with music, I just loved that rhythm, that sort of rhythm piece. And maybe it's a little bit of my African blood too. I like to joke around. I was born in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Yes.
But maybe it was a little bit of my blood, but I love playing. The drums seemed like a natural fit, something I really wanted to get involved with. But I got really lucky. I got to grow up and be able to do quite a few work on quite a few fun projects throughout my career. Got to tour and travel and got to work on quite a few different records, which is always a a fun thing to do. And, I've always had my little own project studio with my drum set in, where I get to do my own recordings, and have worked with other bands to do recordings. So I've always enjoyed just working with different rock bands and kind of going through these interesting adventures, especially throughout my 20s. And I still play today. Things with the Unchained, which I'll mention in a minute, is still around, but we kind of entered a different place in life. It's kind of changed a bit. But during those times, it was a great adventure. I still love playing the drums, but I just don't get to play as often as I did before.
Yeah,
it's too bad. Right?
But life changes. Like, if I remember correctly, one of the other band members, he got married. Yeah. Around about the time that I came through to Toronto. I mean, you married now. Yeah. Life moves on.
Well,
priorities change.
Life changes, right? But I mean, I feel so grateful to, still be a part of the Toronto music community. It's a phenomenal, welcoming community of musicians, of different nationalities, of different styles. There's so many different live music venues that hosts just every genre you can think of. Yeah. We've got incredible festivals that come through Ontario and Quebec, like the Canadian Music Week, for example. It's one of the largest music festivals in Canada throughout the whole year. There's Indie Week. I think, were you here one year for Indie Week?
Do you remember? No, I don't think so.
No, I can't remember or not. But it's an indie festival that hosts bands from all over the world that get to come in Toronto. So, we really get to see musicians come in and play throughout the week and be exposed to world music, right? So many different genres. Like, it's not even genres, it's just world music. There's so much going on. So if you have any listeners, like, one of the reasons I want to mention this, for value for anyone, out there who might be musicians or, in the future looking to travel, there are foundations available to help international travel to Canada as well. But also festivals like Indie Week is a great festival to get involved with. Who knows where things are going to go. I'm keeping in mind what's happening with COVID, but I wish good things for these festivals, and I really hope they can still be okay. So if there are any bands, looking for that, that's a little bit of information, good places to start, if Canada's ever been interesting for you.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Really, I mean, I've just loved supporting some incredible local bands. There are some phenomenal Canadian bands that, I'd love to mention. There's a band out there called Sumo Psycho. Sorry, they've gone a little bit more international. They've become a little bit bigger, but they are just a phenomenal Canadian band. There's another instrumental band from Canada called Intervals. It's like a progressive metal kind of band. They are a little bit more international as well, a bit bigger. But they all started again at, Aaron Marshall was a guy who started, the guitar player, started young, and he's grown this unbelievable project from it. So anyone interested in looking for, some great music, I would encourage Intervals and Sumo Psycho, for example. And then, a couple other cool ones like Hot Lips, kind of an electronic pop band from Toronto, a 3-piece. Just a phenomenal group of musicians writing great music, fighting the good fight out there, putting on excellent shows. Worth definitely listening to if you're open-minded to music. I would really recommend Hot Lips. These are bands that today kind of really stand out to me. Right?
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
So what I found quite interesting when I came to Canada the first time, I was listening to some local radio stations. And I happened to come across 94.9 Rock, which I actually still listen to from here in South Africa because they just play good music. And but what I found is that they actually play a lot of local music on the radio station.
They do,
which is something that one doesn't often hear here in South Africa.
They do. They've always been very involved with the indie music community. 94.9 has sponsored a variety of shows and festivals that I've been a part of. And they are very open to spinning. There's great music. It's not about being famous or a well-known band. There are artists here performing and writing music at an extremely high level. And when you strip away just the names, like the big names, Led Zeppelin, Aerosmith, Guns N' Roses, bands I love, things that get radio airplay. If you just strip away the names and you look at the music itself, like the music's like right up there, man. Some musicians are absolutely phenomenal, and they deserve a little bit of airtime and a chance to be heard by a larger audience, and 94.9 has always provided that for the local music community. Like the one thing I want to mention, I'll never forget, they're a radio station. They're going to play more, like a little bit more radio focused songs, right? It's like, and it could be a variety of music, but it's usually cut for the radio. Like it's made for radio listening. There's usually a singer, there's usually lyrics behind it. But my band at the time that you came to see, The Unchained, we were a 5-piece instrumental band. There's 3 guitar players, a bass player, and a drummer, myself, right? We're writing songs that are, 6 to 10 minutes long, that are progressive rock, that's fully instrumental, that has no lyrics or vocalists whatsoever. We did projects with singers, but the main band is purely instrumental. And not only has 94.9 allowed us to play and sponsored some of the shows that we've played, but they've also aired our music on their stations, the whole thing, no singer, no cuts of the songs. They've just, and we sit there and we listen to it and we're blown away, right? Because we're hearing this and we're like, we really respect how much you just care about local music and giving us a bit of spotlight, right?
Yeah.
So,
I can actually remember, I think I
Yeah.
actually messaged you the one time I was here at home in the kitchen listening to 94.9 Rock, and I heard one of your songs come on the radio. I think I flip and drop you a message and say, hey, I just heard you guys on radio.
That's right.
It was
Yeah,
pretty
great.
cool, though.
They're great. They're great. They're an excellent station, very supportive of the scene,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you still listen to them. That's awesome. I'll let them know. That's great.
Yeah. So,
Cool.
I mean, you were saying that Unchained at the moment is still around, but not really active. I mean, have you got any future plans, or have you guys been talking, or?
Yeah, we keep in touch, right? I mean, we've started families and kind of have our lives, but it's just distance, but who knows where things are going to be, right? The Unchained came from a band previously called Easy Sleazy, and Easy Sleazy had a singer, right? And just we sort of changed, and the singer went his own direction and did his own thing. But we were fortunate enough from that to form the instrumental. So if you look at the whole picture, we were together for a long time, like almost 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So the Unchained is only a piece of that carnation. And the one guitar player and I played in a band before that called Revolver. So that went even longer. So it's never about never. It's always about life just being life. And one day when things are right again, we'll play together. For example, we did a reunion show with Easy Sleazy at one of our The Unchained sets, if that makes any sense. So we were playing Indie Week. We played as The Unchained, but for the first time in years, we brought our singer back and we did a set with him, right? So we had this Easy Sleazy piece. And it wasn't because we forced that to happen. Just everyone felt like we were in a good place to do it. And, we had fans that wanted to see it. And so we did it, right? And it was great. But it's all about timing and life and things kind of just working out the way that they work out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So we'll see. Right?
Yeah. So I mean, you were talking about the fact that you can see different genres of music in Toronto, like the live scene. What street is it? Is it Queens or?
Yeah, Queen Street.
All those establishments used to be on.
Yeah, you've come to Queen Street with me quite a bit. It's changed. And I'm not too stuck in the past. I'm open to change. But we lost one of the best live music venues on the street to a Taco Bell, which is we all know a fast food chain. And those kinds of changes the community doesn't really love. But I'm open to seeing the city change, but with there not being enough funding for these venues, especially with the hit that they've taken now, who really knows the impact of what is even left on Queen Street or other, some of the other busy streets that have music venues, right? King Street, Bloor area, Adelaide, a little bit on Richmond. Like there's live music everywhere. So it really makes me nervous to think about the impact. Like now I think about it's absolutely frightening to know. But yeah, the Queen Street, it's changed over time, but new venues have opened, old venues have closed. So it's a very tricky transitional time for the space.
Yeah.
It really is. It really is. It's a tough time, man.
Well, I suppose we just need to hope for the positive that there'll be new opportunities that are being created by the situation. I mean, there might be some negative stuff that's happened, but hopefully that there's some new opportunities that are created, and hopefully the whole industry and the whole environment just comes back better and stronger than it was before.
I hope so too. Do you have a lot of live music around where you live?
Yeah, look, I mean, there are venues that will host local bands,
right.
Live music, blues rock kind of stuff, blues, some, what else? That seems to be doing pretty well in South Africa at the moment, the guys that are playing the blues and that kind of stuff.
Right.
I'm sure I don't know if you know Jesse Clegg.
Yeah, of course. I have a photo with Jesse Clegg.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Because he's actually dating a Canadian.
Johnny Clegg.
Yeah, Johnny Clegg. But Jesse Clegg is his son. Because now Johnny Clegg's passed away.
I went to his show in Toronto. I think it was 2 years ago, and his son opened the show.
Yeah, that's it.
So I saw his son open, and then we saw Johnny Clegg play.
Yeah,
it was amazing. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
and I think he's actually dating a Canadian now. Jesse Clegg.
Good man.
Man. Absolutely. But yeah, so I've got a friend who's got a venue in Observatory in Johannesburg.
Okay.
It's in his house. He's got he actually created a drumming studio basement, like a basement in his house, like a drumming studio.
Okay.
And he actually never used it as a drumming studio. He then was using it as a venue to host local artists. And it only takes 60 people. Okay. And the deal is that, I mean, it's his house. You go there, you pay, what is it, 500 Rand, and you get dinner, get drinks, help yourself to drinks, plus you get the show for that price. And it's become one of my most favorite places to go to because it's intimate, B, the music is great because it's such a small venue, the musician has to tone it down a little bit, do a little bit more of an acoustic set. If they're used to doing an electric set,
right.
They got to do it a little bit more. It's a little bit more raw, a little bit more, back to basics kind of stuff.
Amazing.
And I've done a couple of podcasts with those guys there at that venue, and like they say that it's actually a little bit intimidating because they're so used to being at another venue where there's this like divide between themselves and the audience. Now all of a sudden you've got people and they're sitting right here in front of you and they're watching you, and like every mistake that you make, like everyone can see it, like you can't really, disguise those mistakes. But in a way you can see that they actually enjoy it because I think it actually takes them back to when they first started or early days or whatever. So even though they do find it a bit daunting, they do enjoy it. But it's such a great venue. But
what
I've been
phenomenal idea. Oh, that's great. That's great. I have wondered if we would see a little bit more of a pickup in sort of underground venues, like you're describing, right? So it's interesting to hear you say this. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. So one interesting observation that I've made and the musicians have spoken about, and it's something that I experienced when I was spending time with you and your wife when she was playing the one night. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
We went to watch her after grabbing dinner, and I don't know if you remember, there was a group of people that were in there that while she was playing, while the other artists were playing, they were having a big fat conversation, right? Yeah. And I think the guy that was there from the radio station that was the host of it that evening or whatever, he asked them to leave, either, respect
Rudy
the,
Blair. Rudy
yeah,
Blair.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, either respect them, the musicians, or please leave,
Did.
kind of thing.
He did. He did.
Yeah, and they eventually left. But it's something I think since experiencing that and then coming back and then starting the podcast and chatting to musicians, that's something that they comment about quite often. Is that when they're playing a gig, when they're playing a set, that people are having big fat they're not like engaged and watching them, they're having their own conversation. And sometimes it puts them off.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's a really distracting thing, especially for artists who are maybe a little quieter, right? They don't have that sort of, from a sonic perspective, that presence of their sound to like overtake a room, right? Like being a rock band, you can't ignore us. It's impossible. If you can try to have a conversation, it's not happening. But the smaller venues, this happens quite often, because the sound is a little bit, like you said, in control, and not as loud as dominating. They go and they have these conversations. Now, mind you, there's always, obviously, I always think about it from the musician side. They're out there giving their time, playing with the songs that they wrote, trying to give you guys a really great night, and then sometimes you got an audience out there that might not be in the live, it's not really a live music venue. It could be, a bar, where there's live music happening. So sometimes if some people are going into a bar, and they want to be with their groups of friends, they're thinking about social, not necessarily the artist on stage, right?
That's
so
right,
there's also like, I'm not saying it's respectful to talk. I'm not saying you should go in and speak. I'm saying that's probably the reason why it happens sometimes, at least. And so, it's fair to, if you would like the audience to be quiet, exactly what Rudy Blair did was excellent. He took a bit of leadership to help out the artist. He was very respectful in the way that he approached the ask. And it was fair. Hey, listen, these artists are here trying to play. If you can keep your conversation down to a minimal and let them have their time to do what they do, that would be great. And it makes a difference, right? Not only from the artist perspective, but the atmosphere in the room changes. You get to slow down a little bit. You don't have to talk all the time. You can just stop and listen to a musician play their songs for, 20, 25, 30 minutes, whatever it is, right? So it's a consideration thing. If a lot of people just kind of had, as listeners, just had that in mind, when an artist was playing, that, maybe consider the level of your speaking or where you're talking, or maybe go closer to the back, or, but everyone has the reason for heading out to the bar. So it's kind of a fine balance sometimes, Yeah. But at least they were quiet, right? Like once Rudy asked everyone to be quiet, and what the atmosphere was better, was it not afterwards? Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Was it not just a better room to enjoy music in? Right?
Absolutely.
So the result is that it's a better experience. Just some people aren't there for the music, so they'll leave. They'll just leave. Yeah. Oh man, I miss that. I really do. I really miss getting out and supporting some of my favorite restaurants and my favorite bands and favorite venues. Heartbroken over the Hideout being closed.
Yes.
It's just really tough. Really tough time.
Yeah.
Who knows?
We'll
see where it goes. Sorry?
What was that place that you and I went to when you were playing and I came with you to one of your gigs? What venue was that? It was a little bit more out of town, eh? Yeah,
it was called the Rock Pile.
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
And they're a little unstable too. They made a post, I think it was earlier this week or last week, suggesting that they're taking things off of their walls, in prep of having to shut down if they can't, if this goes on for too long. If everything picks up and they're able to continue, then they're going to put their stuff back on the walls and continue. But, they're under attack also. Really sad, right?
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
Sad. And they're one of the only venues, like rock venues, around that specific area. So losing that is a little different than losing, just one venue in downtown Toronto. I shouldn't say just one venue. One venue is very important, but it's the only rock venue, the only live venue in that area, right?
Yes.
So it sucks. Yeah. And good people too, great people running these businesses who have been involved with it for years and years and years. The owner of the Rock Piles owned a variety of venues and, has lost his venues before due to gentrification or, rent increasing and, things like that changing. And now he's threatened by this, and they keep going. They keep doing it for the love of music. It's amazing. It blows me away.
Yeah.
They just keep going, man. Yeah. They love music. They love the artists. They love music, and they just keep going. Right? Phenomenal.
Well, I mean, there's a venue here in Joburg, which I think is the oldest pub in Johannesburg and the second oldest pub in South Africa.
Cool.
Called the Radium.
Yeah.
And I mean, one wonders, is that place going to survive? Hopefully it will, because it's probably one of the best.
I hope so.
One of the most enjoyable venues to go to. Probably not the best sounding acoustically, but it's just got such an atmosphere about it. And, the artists love playing there. Yeah.
That would be a sad loss. That'd be a really sad
absolutely.
loss.
Yeah.
Well, oh, man. Is there anything else you wanted to catch up on? Yeah, I don't mean to cut this short. I love chatting with you, but
I know. I see the connection starting to get a bit stuttering a bit there. Anyway, but listen, dude, we're up for almost an hour, so it was a good chat. It was a good catch up. I'm sure there's plenty more we could talk about.
Yeah, there's lots we could, and I'm happy to connect with you again on sort of other topics,
Yeah.
But it was really great to at least just catch up now and connect.
Yeah, absolutely. But we'll have an offline chat about some of your other stuff that I would like to catch up on.
Cool.
You know what I'm talking about.
I do. And you know what? I was actually thinking, just to leave it on this note, maybe one day we'll have an online chat about that, because it could be helpful for other people. And I don't think, offline is always the way to go. We'll talk about it, but maybe there's something there for us to talk about. I like it. Great, man.
Anyway, Ryan, it's been great catching up.
Excellent.
Send my regards to your wife.
I will.
And to your folks, your family.
I will, absolutely. They'll love to hear that. They always ask about you, so it's great.
That's great. Thanks, man.
Okay, we'll chat soon.
Okay, Ryan. Keep well, man. Cheers,
Bye.
And there you have it. That's this week's episode. I hope you enjoyed that one. Don't forget to come back next week for the next episode. And if you haven't already, please rate and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Drop me a DM on Instagram or Facebook. Don't forget to watch the Weekend Crack live on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on YouTube, Facebook Live, and maybe on Instagram this week. I'm not too sure. Been trying to sort out some technical issues there. But please do join us there. And if you don't catch it live, you can always find it on YouTube or Facebook afterwards. And that, my friends, is the end. I'll catch you next time.